So it's a hard ROI on if I become more effective in my speaking and presenting and I could save that time, you're actually adding it to the bottom line.
And that is interesting because so many meetings that happens, possibly that meeting is supposed to finish in 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 15 minutes, but the meeting can go on and on and on. And a lot of meeting I've also observed is it's a lot about trying to get control over things, or at least emotionally feel a sense of I'm in control as a leader. And there is an element of, I want significance, I want control, and the conversation can go all around, And I've observed when you have a good facilitator or a good leader who can come in and help the communication to be shaped in such a way that, it breaks 45 minutes to 30 minutes, 30 minutes to 15 minutes, and even 10 minutes. Good evening, everybody. My name is Bobby Dsouza. You are on the Bobby Dsouza Show. We invite a lot of wonderful guests on our podcast. And today we have an incredible coach whisperer, Shelley Goldstein. Basically transforms visionary leaders into commanding communicators who drive results under pressure. Just a little more introduction of her. She's the architect of the remarkable speaking framework, which in fact is also part of her book, the title. She's equipped over 1,000 professionals across 5 continents to speak with precision when stakes are highest by securing deals, commanding boardrooms, and being a change catalyst through every interaction. Her book is a #1 international best-selling book called Remarkable Speaking, and it's a framework to embody your voice and your vision. Basically, these are something that she's created, and they rewire how leaders communicate at the neurological level. Through her signature 4-minute drill and evidence-based methods, what has been observed is executives don't just improve their speaking, they embody executive presence that influences great trust and helps them to build lasting legacies. So Shelley, I don't know how much of, goodness I did in introducing the way I introduced, but thank you so much for being on the show. Such a joy having you today.
Thank you, Bobby. I'm excited to meet your audience and have a great conversation.
Thank you, Shelley. So, before we get into a number of interesting questions that I have, which is connected to the framework, to the book, if you can just, possibly take a minute and share a little bit about your journey, the raw, unfiltered journey of how did you get to, and why did you even choose this path?
It's so interesting. I can't say for sure if being a leadership communications coach chose me or I chose it. Maybe it was a little bit of both or an accident along the way. I started as a designer. My background is in design. And what was interesting about that was I had a fear of speaking. I was in a college production and I actually forgot my lines as an actor, as a performer.
Wow.
And that sort of guided me into behind the scenes. And so this designing background happened, and I was able to be part of a great industry, the theater and entertainment, but from a behind the scenes point of view. Fast forward to transitioning into marketing and things like that, I started to have speaking opportunities, and I didn't always take them. So I said, let me invest in some of my own speaking skills. What is preventing me from showing up as my best self? And that process of being educated, of learning how to not stay behind my fears, but step out into my power, really was a journey that I said, gee, if I can do this, let me try to help others. And through taking other courses and being invited to train other people through the principles which I learned, I then saw people transforming. And I said, this is amazing. It was such a great feeling. But the whole journey from design to marketing to public speaking is really the similarity between that is expression of oneself, whether it's through clothing or through a message or just using your voice. I've been able to put all these years of that experience into helping others speak, and maybe the calling found me based on that journey.
Yeah. It is interesting, how somebody can start off their journey in design, then get into theater, behind the scene, and how that slowly maneuvers, connects the dots and get you into an industry where you did not even think about initially. But that's the beauty of life, right? It's mysterious. It's crazy, but it is beautiful. There are so many things we pick from life, and I'm so glad that in the profession that I'm in, I get to meet so many people, and the more joy is when I meet other wonderful speakers and coaches, who actually help other people, enable other people. Just one question, which is random, but I think is interesting. What is one lesson that you picked up from the theater, observing from behind the scenes, that basically is connected to communication and the importance of it in today's world?
I'm so glad you tapped into that. And yes, we have we're in the communications industry, and I know you use music, and that's sort of a theatrical experience. What I realized, hindsight, looking back at the theater, I had this burning desire to be on stage. I loved the feeling of connecting with people, because I would see myself, an observer in the audience, how much I connected with the message of what was happening on stage or on the screen, if you're in theater as well. And it always was a good feeling. It was a feeling of connection, of expression, of, hey, me too, alignment. I would align with the characters' stories. And the excitement of that seemed so special. From that time, later, understanding that connection piece could be all of us. So the journey of standing on stage, the fear, how can I connect those two pieces? So learning that connection, understanding how I felt as an audience member, welcoming, open to listen, wanting to learn, is really a strong principle that I use today in my own coaching practice to help others.
Wonderful. In fact, isn't that very universal, right? For example, when there is a conflict between, a husband and wife, the biggest conflict or the reason for conflict is basically one of the partners says that, you're not listening to me, and, you don't listen, you don't understand, you don't care. And the reality is, human needs are still very basic in the world of AI and human contemplating to go on Mars. But right, the essence of humanity is still the same, right? People want to be understood. People want to feel a sense of connection. People want to feel a sense of, that somebody really cares for me. And you actually wonderfully shared this. I remember when I was a little boy, the first time I stood on stage to sing a song, to perform a song, and the lights on the stage were so blinding that I could not see the audience at all. And my teacher in school told me, Bob, look at them and sing and smile. And I'm wondering, as a little puny boy, I'm thinking, they can't even see me, but they were actually able to see me, but I could not see them. And I think I asked myself the same question. Will I be able to connect with them? And I think so many years down the line, I think we are in the profession of every time when we go in front of audiences, whether it is one-to-one, whether it is a group, whether it's a very large group, it's all about connection, right? And communication, the center of it is connection. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you're 100% right, but the connection cannot be forced. And I think the secret, and you just talked about it, was sharing the story. The best we can do is share our story. That's what a performance is all about, whether it's a song, a poem, or a stage production, or somebody giving a presentation. You're sharing a part of your journey, a part of your experience, some story, event, moment that happened. And that is where the audience, most of us, connect on that. Not everybody will, but most of us do, because they're hearing your journey and they're saying, me too, because their own story of their own movie is playing in their head at the same time. Now, I noticed when you're talking about a personal relationship, same thing. You, and we use that language as opposed to saying, I feel this, I've experienced this. It is a very different kind of way that it's being presented. You put somebody on the defensive. I know I would be. But if that person says, here's how I felt about what I experienced the other day when I heard you share this. Am I right in that? And you flip that narrative about your experience, I think most times we're more likely to get a positive result. And that's the communications piece, not forcing our agenda to want to connect, but sharing our moments and allowing people to connect with us. It's almost like an invitation.
Yeah. And beautifully shared. I love the way you articulate. In fact, the first time you and I connected, what struck me was basically the way you articulate things. So that's wonderful. You versus I feel this. I think I've heard this theory before as well, even when I do sort of master classes, and we have done a bit of this. But it is so true, Every time when there is a you and blaming someone else, pointing a finger, people close, right? Whether it's a little child, 3 years old, who knows that the mom is shouting and showing the finger and the child closes. Or it could be when we are 25, 35, 45, 65, whatever our age is. So wonderfully shared. So here is basically my second question, which is, many leaders see communication as a soft skill. But you actually talk about your clients saving a 5-figure ROI as a result of your training. Now that is astounding. How can you break down how that works actually?
Absolutely. Interpersonal skills, soft skills, are demanded of all of us on our jobs. We're expected to present. We're expected to sell. We're expected to share information about our work. And we're expected to demonstrate, as a matter of fact, and across colleagues in different departments. However, so little attention is given to training those skills, but moreover, I think, or what I've experienced is, how do we measure that? How do you know that having better interpersonal communication skills is actually helping the organization? Well, that led to a case study I was doing with a global equity firm. And in coaching their VPs, we discovered the average person had 10 meetings, sometimes a day. And what we did through interactive communications, improving their communication skills so they had more effective meetings, more efficient, we were able to reduce the time from 60 minutes to 30 minutes, and in some cases 15 minutes.
Wow.
So what's the ROI on that? We did a calculation. Taking a meeting from 60 minutes and cutting it down saved one person almost 19% of their hours in one work week. Now you base that on a 40-hour work week. Let's just say that for an example. That's equivalent to almost 49 days annually. 49 days, that's more than a month's time. Now you put a salary to that. Let's say somebody has a $200,000 a year salary. You count those hours of those 49 days, it's over $24,000 in savings on the bottom line. Now, that particular executive could use that time to maybe prospect more, maybe lead more, dive deeper into some problem-solving issues, perhaps use the time more effectively to be proactive in creating and innovating new ideas and new ways to solve problems. Have more time to do the work you're actually hired to do. You take that number, as we did with this global equity firm, and we multiplied it times everybody in that meeting. It went up to over 6 figures in savings at the bottom line. So it's a hard ROI on, if I become more effective in my speaking and presenting, and I could save that time, you're actually adding it to the bottom line.
And that is interesting, because so many meetings that happens, possibly that meeting is supposed to finish in 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 15 minutes, but the meeting can go on and on and on. And a lot of meeting I've also observed is, it's a lot about trying to get control over things, or at least emotionally feel a sense of I'm in control as a leader. And there is an element of, I want significance, I want control, and the conversation can go all around, And I've observed, when you have a good facilitator or a good leader who can come in and help the communication to be shaped in such a way that, it breaks 45 minutes to 30 minutes, 30 minutes to 15 minutes, and even 10 minutes. So, thank you for sharing that, Shelley. That is powerful. And I think anybody who invites Shelley for coaching their leaders, their tenured leaders, I think will greatly benefit. So I personally recommend her. Go ahead, check out her work, check out her website. We'll talk about that very soon, but let's move forward.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, the other question I had, the third question I had was, you coach executives to prepare by unpreparing. Now, that's interesting. Never heard of that. You coach executives to prepare by unpreparing. How does this shift actually lead to effective outcomes?
So it's counterintuitive, right? Yeah, we spend all these hours preparing to be in more meetings. Now, I've never heard anybody say, I need to be in more meetings. I want to be in more meetings. I wish meetings were longer. Most of us are scratching our head. Let me get out of here. I know, at least in my experience, that was the case. Well, the same ROI applies. Look at the hours you spend preparing your meeting time. Sometimes if you have a big presentation, it could be hours. It can involve departments like marketing and other areas, HR, to really put together a slide deck, create the perfect statements, cover all your points. Well, I have a 4-minute drill in my framework, 4 minutes, that could help you prepare for that 60-minute meeting. That could take hours of preparation, that maybe it's 4 or 5 hours. Maybe you could bring it down to an hour. Again, time and cost savings. So the 4-minute drill gets you on message with a very specific call to action. What's my big idea for this meeting? Give me a specific example, and then what's the value? That's all you need to know. When you share a story, as you did in the beginning when you were a little boy, I talked about my time on stage. That story does not need a script. I don't need to spend hours writing it. But just knowing the example, and maybe there's multiple examples in your presentation, doing that 4-minute drill to identify those examples and value, when you're retelling, when you're reflecting on that moment, the script is there. It's natural. It's how you see it in your mind. So you don't have to over prepare in memorizing scripts and things of that nature. That's where most of us get hung up and get nervous. So this is my way of unpreparing. Just do the best you can. Nothing wrong with having a note card that has an exact quote or number. That's important. You want to be truthful about that, and that's okay to read that off. But for the most part, that's all the preparation my clients have done to lead great meetings, to facilitate great meetings, and let the conversation flow from there. It's a lot more organic. You sound more human and more compassionate and honest. And that is where people connect. Back to that story of connection.
And so true, we live in a world wherein teleprompters and scripts are basically used, even in large gatherings all across the world. But I think organic, when people speak from the heart, and I think stories are very powerful. Even in the profession that I'm in as a speaker, I've realized that stories really, really connect, like you shared earlier as well. Stories really connect. It helps people, to put themselves in the place of the audience, So there is a whole spark of connection. Now, what I've realized is the book that you wrote, there is a specific framework that you used, right? A framework to embody your voice and vision. Could you tell us what is the framework and how does it actually help executives to improve their message, high stake pitch, or negotiating power, which is actually chapter 7 of your book? So.
That's right. There's a whole chapter on it. And I touched on it a little bit with that 4-minute drill. So my framework is based on timed sprints, shorter moments of iterating, speaking out loud, a combination of speaking and writing drills within a 4-minute time frame that help you actually drill down, grind down to your essential message. And so following the framework and implementing it not only for those bigger meetings, but for everyday interactions, it is designed to work within your busy day. And we can practice the framework with these daily interactions. And that's also the key. Timed sprints and practicing and using it every day without setting aside a separate time to practice. So for example, I talked about the 4-minute drill, adding to the bottom line by saving time and reducing meetings, because we talk about what's my big idea, for example, and what the value is I'm bringing to this meeting. But by practicing every day, you could say, go to the cafe and ask the barista the question, what's my big idea? I'm here to order a coffee, but I'd like to try something new. For example, I heard your macchiato chai has a real spicy taste to it. I'm looking to explore new ways of drinking my coffee. What do you think? Using that little framework in an everyday scenario, like ordering a coffee from a barista, is a way to practice the framework. And the more you repeat it, as I say, repetition is recognition. That's how you burn neural pathways. That's how you build new behaviors. And my clients who use this drill at least once a day, it becomes intuitive. And that's the framework.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing. Shelley, just wanted to ask you, let's say there is a senior executive leader just putting you on the spot, asking you a question, and possibly we could just plug in the framework. Let's say you have an executive senior leader, watching and listening to this podcast, and this person has all the capabilities, understands the market, is an expert from a domain point of view, technically is very, very sound, has been in the industry and in that organization for the last 10, 15 years. So from a knowledge point of view, from an information point of view, he's doing well. But somehow he feels that when he's communicating with his team, somehow he sees that the team is shut down. They don't easily open up to him. And, even though he tries, listening to his coaches and saying, okay, I need to do this, be more empathetic, be more compassionate. But somehow he sees that, a lot of his team members don't open up to him. And as a result, he does not know why they are not performing. How would you use the framework for the leader? Like, if you could possibly give us an example.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad you asked this, because I love interactive and I love experiential training. So let's use a real life example. Most people that run businesses, that founded companies are very confident in what they do. Fortune 100, 500, billion-dollar companies, they're trying new things and taking risks every day. So what is the piece that's not helping them communicate? It certainly, I wouldn't think would be confidence. They've got confidence. It's stepping into that power. So, for example, I worked with a young gentleman who was an entrepreneur and was a multimillionaire before he was 27 years old, a college dropout. He had built this company and sold it for millions and millions of dollars. Now, he said to me, Shelley, I'm being asked to speak on stages, on podcasts. People want to interview me. But when I sold the company, that was like the past. He really believed his identity was sold with the company. So we worked together using the framework. And I said to this gentleman, what is your big idea? What was your big idea behind starting that company? He gave an example and the value of it. That is his secret weapon. That is his unfair advantage, because nobody else has that story. And identifying it using the framework, that is his answer. That is his baseline for going on to these podcasts or interviews, because he did not leave his identity with the company. That always stays with you, like my costume design, like my marketing. It's who I am. It's part of what I am today, and how the certain experiences of those times help me become a better leadership development coach. Now, it's similar when you're speaking to your employees or your board of directors. What is that experience? What's the big thing? What's the big idea they need to know about you? Your example, what's your experience? Sharing that story and the value behind it, and inviting people to connect with that story. That's your truth. You can share it, you don't need a script for it, and you leave it at that. You will be surprised, as we all are when we hear a great story. Wow, I really appreciated it. Wow, that's just like me. They understand successes and failures alike. You too have had those. And then that's where people connect on those similarities, on those shared experiences. So the leaders doing the drill, identifying these moments in their journey, is part of their legacy.
It's interesting how, you could have directly answered the question by giving, let's do this. But you actually went a little deeper, wherein I think what you did is you basically brought the whole element to, what do I really believe about myself? What is my big idea? What is what I stand for? What made me successful? Like the example that you gave. And when people listen to the story of the success and the fail and the struggles and what went well, I think, like you correctly said, people connect. So sometimes you don't even have to tell them open up. People will open up. And I think that's a good way you brought this together. So rather than, just telling, okay, this is the formula, do this, you said, this framework can actually be used in such a way that you impact the people by, number one, going back to yourself, looking at your own identity, sharing that identity to the other person. And as a result, people start connecting to the story. And what do you say, like in a subconscious level, not just on a conscious level, on a subconscious level, they start attracting and connecting to you. Am I right?
That's the embodiment of the voice and the vision. You've got a vision. When you embody it and you connect it to your voice, that's when we can change the world. And this framework was developed out of my own personal way of learning. I am still pretty strong-headed and strong-willed. I don't like when people tell me what to do. I need to do this. I have to do this. That adds pressure. So, and I mentioned, for me, it's experiential. driving people through it by experiencing it, by sharing a journey, by allowing people to experience my story. That's how I learned, and that's where I applied the framework, and it's clearly helping other people.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing this, Shelley. And my question is that you say that, excellent communication isn't optional. It is basically a leader's edge. For anyone who's going through transformation, going through change, going through disruption with the dawn of AI, how does becoming a remarkable speaker directly impact their ability to lead change and create a legacy for them?
I'm going to go back to the young entrepreneur I spoke to that sold his company for millions and millions of dollars. He felt void. He felt like he had to start a new chapter, and everything before that company is in the past. The past really explains your present. You're not dwelling on your past. You're sharing those stories, you're sharing those moments, because no one else has your journey of that, your experience. Now, many people have started companies just like this entrepreneur. But how they did it in their own way is the unique identifier. That's, again, your unfair advantage, and that's your edge. That's how you build your legacy. So when we read about Steve Jobs, we read about Dolly Parton, we read about any kind of leader, successful business person, entertainer, their journey is what compels us. There's so many documentaries out there to learn about how hard it was in the beginning. Maybe it was easy, but those trials and tribulations, experiences, that's your edge. Because I too use AI as a co-pilot, as an assistant, but AI isn't going to know your journey unless you tell it to them. So remarkable speaking, the framework helps you get deeper back into your history. Whether it's yesterday or 20 years ago, and those experiences are forming and shaping who you are today, and AI will not have that. So that's going to be your unique identifier. That's going to be your edge.
Recently I was reading about, that a lot of people do not talk about their culture, their heritage, and what they have been through. The good, the bad, the ugly, the experiences that they have gone through. But in reality, that actually is basically the strength, right?
Absolutely. There are studies that show, and this is very important. I'm glad you brought that up. I've worked with people in well over 50 countries. So there's lots of different cultures and language, norms that are specific to those particular cultures. There is evidence that says, regardless of your culture and how restricted it may be, everybody wants to be acknowledged. There is a percentage that they feel better about themselves knowing they've done a good job and they feel good about it and somebody's acknowledging it. So there's a degree of how you might want to promote yourself. But again, it goes back to your story, sharing those moments in an interview. Why do you love your job? Tell us a story.
All right. So before we end, Shelley, this is my question. I've heard you say a number of times that excellent communication isn't actually optional. It is basically our edge. For executives who are going through change, disruption, dawn of AI, transformation, how does becoming a remarkable good speaker directly affects their ability to lead change and build their own legacy for their lives?
Well, like I mentioned before, a lot of executives are very confident people. I mean, they've built, million, multi-million, hundreds of $1 million Fortune 100, 500 companies. They lead hundreds and thousands of individuals to make decisions based on their risks and ideas. They are confident people. So in identifying your edge, like I shared with the young entrepreneur who had this company they sold, your legacy, your history helps you. It's part of who you are. Just like my background as a designer in costumes, my background as a marketer, that all leads to who I am today and helps me understand my job better, be a better communications coach, be a better leader, be a better person. What has happened in your past helps people understand your present. And having that story, sharing those moments, sharing those stories is your unfair advantage. It is your edge. No one else is going to have that story. Just like my journey, or the entrepreneur who built this company from scratch as a college dropout. And there are many people that drop out of college and have successful companies. But Steve Jobs' story is different than Bill Gates, than my client. That is your unique advantage. Where AI cannot identify that. It cannot write that story for you. That's why we have to share those moments and be as introspective as we possibly can. That's the embodying. When you embody your voice and your vision, that's when you can change the world. And that is your edge.
And interestingly, like we spoke earlier, it all begins with me, right? As an I introspecting, I looking inward, actually. And when there are more private victories within me, when I know clearly what my identity is, what is my strength, how my past experiences has shaped me, has helped me. And as a result of that, I'm able to lead, influence, impact thousands of people, or one person or two person or 10 people. But I'm impacting people simply because the journey and the experiences I have gone through. And it's very important to, be very clear as to, like Tony Robbins wonderfully shares that, life does not happen to you, it happens for you. So everything that we go through. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we just lost a great visionary and activist, Jane Goodall, who studied animals. She studied life in nature. And why are so many people fascinated by it? It's her journey. There are posts everywhere. I've made a few myself. There are so many of her lifetime experiences that she shares. Her experiencing watching the apes, her experience helping underserved communities through her studies of animals, reshaped how we look at human nature, because it's not just necessarily human. And her stories, her journeys, Tony Robbins' journey, their story is really what captivates all of us. They're just normal people living normal lives, but they're doing extraordinary things when they share those moments. That's that difference.
Wonderful. Such a pleasure having a conversation with you, Shelley. And with the remarkable work that you're doing and the book that you've written, if anybody wants to buy the book that you have, how can people buy it? And also, in case clients and organizations and individuals, leaders who wants to be coached by you, if they want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
You can go to the Remarkable Speaking website, and you could also find me on LinkedIn. And Coach Shelley, you can look for Remarkable Speaking on YouTube, where there's tons of videos and tips and things. And my book link is on the website, book.remarkablespeaking.com.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Shelley. It was such a pleasure speaking with you. And in case anybody's got a question, feel free to ask. And thank you, everybody, being on the Bobby Dsouza Show. And thank you, Shelley, once again. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bobby. This has been a really great conversation, and I appreciate your introspective questions.
Thank you, Shelley.